Hello, Kimber. How are you
Hello.
today?
I am doing
Awesome. We have Kimber Cross in the comeback seat today, and she's going to be telling us an adventure and a journey that she's been on. And I'm pretty excited to have her as a guest in the seat today. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about you, Kimber, before we get into all the questions, Q and A's?
for sure. So I come from the great state of Washington. I've born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, and I've been an educator for the better half of 20 years. But I also, for the last decade, have been heavily involved in the mountains, and I am a full-time teacher, part-time alpinist, professional alpinist, and I joined an organization out here called the Mountaineers and stayed with that and got skills in glacier travel and rock climbing, ice climbing, and you fast forward to the here and now, and I've been able to climb with the support of many different sponsors, from North Face to Mountain Hardwear and Peak Refuel, Thermic. So it's just been a very fun process of jumping into the world of mountain as a professional. But something that makes my story a little more unique is I was born with one hand. So I am what you describe an adaptive athlete. I need adaptive equipment to ice climb, or I have to maybe modify the ways that I do things in the mountains. So I'm still safe, but with one hand, there comes some challenges, and I just learned to overcome and adapt.
Now, tell us how you only have one hand. Tell us what happened, or how you were born into this world, or
Yeah,
however you want to make the story.
absolutely. So, 1986, I'm born, and my parents had some struggles with health in their early marriage. My mom had a brain tumor and got Cushing's disease and went through this whole process where doctors were like, hey, you're probably going to be infertile. You're not going to have children. Just a lot of different warnings. And honeymoon baby turned out to be their exciting and nerve-wracking news because she had been through such drastic brain surgeries and thyroid
Jeez.
medical. She went through a lot those prior 2 years. And then to find out, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant, which is a miracle in the fact that I wasn't expecting this and had already been told no. But now I am with child, what's going to happen? And so it was inconclusive as to maybe the reasons. My mom has it in her gut. Oh man, it was the 80s and there's a lot of different medications and struggles. And so what they call this is a terminal transverse defect. And there's a percentage of one in a large number of people will experience this in utero. And so essentially, my hand stopped developing and never finished. And it wasn't pressed up against the wall of the uterus and didn't have room. Sometimes that's the case in certain situations, just the development stopped. And so I've had, obviously my thumb would have been there. And if I turn, my little pinky is almost is the majority of my palm and I can flex it and move it. But being born that way and learning how to adapt from the beginning is where my story started.
Sure. And how did your parents raise you to be the same as everyone? Has there been a struggle? Were you ever anything at school? Did you feel different? What were you feeling when you were growing up as a young Kimber?
I had incredibly supportive parents, and definitely they came from different views. My mom, super empathetic and protective, wanted to always make sure, can you do that? Is it going to hurt? Is it? She just had never experienced in this. There wasn't a lot of representation. So her hope or belief in what I could be capable of based on what she had seen, maybe in the visible representation of athletics or just human, she just didn't know. So she was very more protective and nervous for me, I would say, and always kind of checking in. My dad was very much like, you'll find a way and you will excel in whatever sport you put yourself in. So he was kind and patient, but you don't give up on yourself. You find a way, you push just like any other athlete. And my dad was super athletic. My mom was a super outgoing go-getter type person. And so I definitely see aspects of their independence, her independence as a female and my dad's athleticism. They saw that in me right away. They're like, once you started walking, it was, wow, this girl is on a mission. She is a whole level of confident that we need to prepare for. So that's kind of what I'm
So you
told.
taught them how to
I
chill
kind
out.
of taught them I will handle this. And I do have a vivid memory of going to a clinic, and there are a lot of other kids with limb differences, most congenital, born that way. And the doctors were like, here's the new technology we have. And 80s, early 90s. And really all of that to me felt like a hindrance where I was like, I don't want this clinky thing. And I can
Yeah.
play piano without it, or I can tie my shoe without it. Things maybe took me longer to learn by a couple months or more trial and error tying my shoe. But I remember vividly in second grade in line tying my shoe and being like, duh, teacher, I tie my shoe by myself. And maybe all my other friends had learned in first grade or kindergarten if they really had a parent on it teaching them.
Yeah.
And so skills came at a different pace than myself, but they came in and my parents were like, oh, that's how she's going to do it. And as far as who they could turn to and say, oh, this person did it. I love telling the story. Jim Abbott was a pitcher in the MLB, and he had one hand, he had a stump, and his method was tucking the glove under his arm, pitching with his hand that had all the fingers, and then quickly putting his hand into the glove under his armpit that had the stump to be able to catch. And that's what I saw and who they alluded to. And so I did fast pitch for 9 years. And I was a pitcher because I was
That
like,
is
well,
awesome.
that must be the sport of one-handed people because I was very athletic and I loved being active. I've very much had a lot of my dad in me. And it was so fascinating. A couple of weeks ago, my parents are now elderly and getting up there. And I went over to help organize rooms and go through paperwork. And you grow up and you become an adult yourself and realizing there's ways to take care of your family that are a little unique from when you're a kid. And I remember finding this file, and in the file were articles from 1982 till 1994 of just clippings from newspapers. Anytime they were talking about sports and featured people with limb differences or a man with no arms and legs who still played the guitar or Jim Abbott, all these articles and these booklets of how to raise a kid with a limb difference, but they're written in the 80s. And I never knew my mom had kept this for number one, nearly 40 years, but I
Sure.
never knew that she, any chance she got to learn to get representation for herself. I never saw these articles. I never read the words that Jim Abbott was saying. And one was so powerful, this quote where he was like, man, sometimes I wish people would ask me different questions in interviews and talk more about the game, but it's always like the elephant in the room. You're in the MLBs and you have one hand. Oh, you're an
Yeah.
inspiration. That can get annoying. But I then have to remember maybe this article, maybe this interview is going to reach another little boy or a little girl that look like me. And perhaps it's the motivation they need to accomplish their dreams. And I remember reading this about 3 weeks ago for the first time, this article, and I started weeping, realizing Jim Abbott was talking about me without even realizing it. I was that little girl when he said, maybe this little girl will be able to see herself and believe in herself. And I'm like, my mom, that's what she had
I'm gonna start crying already.
to believe. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And they had baseball cards in there of Jim Abbott. She got baseball cards from the 80s of featuring this man, this tall white guy, and was like, here's the hope that I'll give my daughter. And so growing up, I was definitely, there were a couple different experiences I had where the reactions from kids were nervousness. I remember being in a McDonald's play place and I waved to a kid and then they were like, ugh, and they turned around and ran away. And I was like, why they run away? It wasn't clicking. It wasn't making sense. Why would your reaction be like that? But then once I got older in junior high, you start liking boys. You start, that consciousness of my appearance is what's most valuable, which we know it's not. But as
Right.
you're an adolescent, you begin that process that seems so human nowadays, even though it's heartbreaking. My value is in my physical form. And I was like, well, I am so far from perfect. No guy will like me. I have to hide myself. So I'm walking in the hallways with hands in my pockets or hiding my hand under my binder. And I did that all through junior high, all through high school. But I played on the varsity sport teams and I was friendly. In my mind, though, I know maybe everyone saw me at the basketball game, dribbling both hands, shooting. I was successful at sports, but then I would walk the hallways and be like, no one has to see it. No one should see it because I'm hideous. And I really regret. I feel so sad for young Kimber, for adolescent Kimber, because she definitely felt I'll never be good enough. I'll never be pretty enough because I just didn't see women. Jim Abbott was cool and that was great and that was really
Yeah.
helpful for my parents, but I just was like, I don't see any women who are married and athletic and in modeling ads or in on sport teams or I didn't, it was me. And when I did see a representation, it was a monster or a villain in a movie. So
One of my go-tos is I always think of Bethany Hamilton and a surfer. That's who I would want to be a role model to for my daughter. But I don't know if that was
yeah,
around your time or if she was a little bit older. But
she
you
was
older.
she was a little bit younger than me, but
Oh,
when
okay.
that happened, when her The movie came out, the book came out. I gleaned. I had like a poster, I had the book, I had whatever memorabilia was made. And of course, everyone, whenever they would see my hand, they're like, have you heard about Bethany Hamilton? Do you know Bethany
Uh-huh.
Hamilton? Like, suddenly, when you have a limb loss, you're all in the same club and you Zoom weekly. And I was like, I don't know her and I'm
I
not
have
her.
not
But
met her.
yes,
We have
like,
not went on Oprah together.
oh, right. But that's the thing about the adaptive world. I was born this way and part of this club day one. But anyone at any stage in their life can become disabled, can have a limb difference. And so it is a reality. I have, since I was a little kid, people would come to my dad every July 5th. After July 4th, someone would reach out to my dad and say, hey, my son, my daughter, my cousin, my uncle, my nephew, my dad, their hand got blown off. And it'd be like, how's your daughter doing things? And he's like, well, she's had 18 years of this, or she's been doing this for 12 years, or she's 30. I'll connect you. And whenever I could give hope, it still happens in these day and age. Like, people have frostbite or lose fingers in the climbing world and are like, will I ever be able to do it again? Will I ever? You're going to go through all the physical pain that I never went through, but your body is so adaptable. This will become your new normal. The pain, the nerves, they will heal, it will go away, and then you'll learn to modify and adapt the way that you need to.
Yes.
Welcome to the club.
I've been learning the last 5 years how to adapt, and I
Yeah.
think I've come up with staring never gets more comfortable. I always felt like I wanted to tell people staring never gets more comfortable. Teach your kids, that. But also, I had another guest on here that said, educate your kids. Don't stare back at them, but just educate them. Say, hey, this is why I'm different, whatever. So when I have told your story to some friends, I always say alpinist. And we're all like, I've never heard of that word, but I go, well, mountain climbing or whatever. But it's such a cool, I've looked at all your pictures. I read an article on you. And can you tell our listeners what started your adventure for this? You were athletic, you were outgoing, and now you're a teacher, and now you're mountain climbing. So how do you go from in the classroom to I'm going to go on mountain climb?
It was a time in my life where a friend and I were going through a breakup in the exact same month. And it was so necessary where we were in our life and our stability, but our partners were not maybe in the most stable parts of their life, and realized we're not a healthy match right now. And so we're both like, well, we're single and this kind of hurts. So what do we do? And her boyfriend had previously done a course with the mountaineers. So she had the awareness of, hey, would you want to climb Mount Rainier? Would you want to take this heartache and put it into this 6 months of intensive learning and training, and then spend a whole summer and beyond climbing and make Rainier our goal? And I was like, that sounds like a great idea. I have only been fishing and hunting. I did a hike for the first time. And it's so ironic. I grew up in the Northwest, but we weren't hikers or campers. We fished. We would stay in my dad's camper trailer on top of his truck and fish in the morning, or we'd go elk hunting. I have a crossbow, disabled hunter's permit. And so that's the world I knew. And that's how I connected with nature and loving the earth and the outdoors. But climbing was a whole different idea. And then I was like, oh, what happens when you climb Rainier, and learning the gear and learning what you're going to need to stay warm and the circulation of my stump, the lack of, how do I protect it? And so I just agreed that I would join this basic alpine course with her. It's the mountaineers, and mountaineering is a term where it's mountains and your kind of glacier travel, and maybe there's some rock climbing in it. And alpinism, the alpine is really above tree level type stuff. And with alpinism, there's a lot more ice and rock and technical skill mixed in with that mountaineering. And as time has gone on and my skills have grown, I've kind of leaned into the more alpinism versus just kind of glacier travel and less technical routes that are still full of crevasses and risk and all that. But it came from a gal friend going, let's take our heartache and do some character development and physical training. And oh my goodness, I learned what type 2 fun was. I learned what a sufferfest, the cycle of it's so hard, I can't believe it, oh my gosh. And then you come home and you forget about the pain and you just have the pictures and you're like, this was incredible. And you go plan the next trip. And
So it became addictive.
it really did. I found that, number one, I was getting into, I'd always kind of been athletic, and you're a pretty active person. And so it wasn't 0 to 60 getting in there physically, but it was a whole new level, like hiking thousands of feet up, and the mileage rate versus the North Cascades, man, the ascent to start the climb to base camp are pretty intense. And so I soon learned how to train. And from there, really just get into a whole new realm of grit and perseverance and teamwork. just my character building. Not only was I feel like my physical frame building new levels of strength, but my character. It really, mountaineering can affect you entirely, mind and body and soul and strength. It's incredible.
It's a game changer, it sounds like.
It's a game changer. The levels of confidence I had in all these different realms because I walked into the world of mountaineering. I did not expect that. I was like, oh, we'll walk up Rainier with some gear and people that know more than us. And to flash forward a decade, it's just incredible. The doors that were opened and the experiences meeting people, climbing with people of all backgrounds, all identities, all cultures. It's so fun because you have hours of walking with them, talking, sharing your story, hearing their story, sharing opinions, sharing fears, sharing hopes. But at times you're tied to each other on a rope and your lives are connected. And so you need the ability to have risk assessments that are similar and be able to communicate. And it's quite an amazing world. I really love the humaning aspect and getting to interact with your fellow, climbing partner in this world.
And was there any scary moments that you want to share that happened on one of your trips
There have been some close calls.
when you were first
I
starting?
remember a little Tahoma having you're close together and watching rock fall, but it's easy to separate or go at different speeds and people take rests at different times. And I remember this person maybe 30, 40 feet above me put their hand to rest on a boulder and lean down and could watch me and the person up to my right, and the boulder unlodged and just started going straight down at me. And I had shale and rock, smaller rock, and so you just can't really move fast and it's steep. And knowing like that's coming right at me, I have to get out of the way. And you're trying to move as fast and safe as you can. And the sound of rocks like whizzing by you and a boulder whizzing by you, and knowing like that could have taken me out and that could have been curtain closed. So there's definitely risk and objective and subjective hazards that you're constantly dealing with in the mountains and trying to make good decision making throughout the whole course. But I've had big ice fall near me or avalanche. You just, it's always there, or a person slipping. There's routes where it's not even a team connected to your team, but you just need to, you watch someone fall, or you want to give first aid, or you want to not be below them as stuff is falling, or if they fall. There's just a lot of hazards that I've had to deal with and mitigate around, survive.
And then when did you say, hey, I need to invent something? And
During our second year, the first year of your basic alpine course with this particular club, you're learning how to follow on glacier, on rock, trad climbing. And then in the intermediate course, you level up where you get to be the leader. How do you lead a glacier team up a frozen volcano or a mountain with glaciers on it? How do you lead on trad? And then the third module is ice climbing, or in Washington specifically, it's alpine ice. And so you have the North Ridge of Baker or the Fisher Chimney routes on Shuxton. And there's different alpine routes that the steepness level, the technical level, the ice, whether it's Serac or it is frozen ice, those are all elements. So how do you climb it and lead it and be on the sharp end, as we say? And I definitely realized that's a two-handed sport. I knew how to build an adaptive piece for my ice axe on glacier travel, and you always kind of want to uphill up mountainside so you fall into the mountain with it. And so there's a strap that my mitt would go in, and I'd quickly wrench down on this side when the mountains on this side of my body, and so I can go in. And I was very fast with that. Yep, I can switch it back and forth and have stability should I fall or should I need to catch someone's fall. But with rock, I tape up my stump. I like to call it my hex 9. Hexes are kind of this metal passive throw that you put in a crack, kind of sound or look like cowbells, and this hex 9 is the same shape or size as this. So I'm like, oh, it's my flesh 9, and I tape it up. I can just put it in there and lock it off and mantle. And you learn all the different ways that my stump can climb rock, and I can lead and clean gear and swing leads. Like that really was not an issue. But then you go into ice climbing and you're like, it's definitely a two-handed sport. And that part, I was like, I may not be able to finish this course because I don't know. I can't just duct tape an ice tool to my hand. There's so much technique that goes behind it. And the number one rule of ice climbing is don't fall. And the number two rule is also don't fall. So you just sit back and you're like, oh man, I'm stuck here. Because like I had said at the beginning, I was maybe 6 when we had gone into a clinic to learn about prosthetics and the world of supporting limb differences. And I was like, nope, deuces, not interested. None of that looks great. All of that also, in the adolescent age, it's kind of having a spotlight on you if you're wearing a contraption that are different. And I just was like, I don't No, I want to be small. My whole goal is like, be as invisible as I can with this disability so I fit in with society. And then you get to this course and you realize, I really want to participate in that, but I definitely need something to aid. And we talk about the representation piece, and my an instructor who advocated for me to be able to participate in the basic course was the same instructor intermediate level that was like, hey, here's a picture of a woman. Her name's Maureen Beck, and she just had this movie short film come out at Real Rock, and it's called Stumped, and she has one hand and she climbed, and she just climbed like a 512 something, and it was a big deal. And I was like, oh, who's this person? And he goes, look, I found a picture of her with a prosthetic ice tool, and it was just the back of her from a distance, but there was something on her hand and it was allowing her to climb ice. And that's all I needed to see to go, well, it's been done before. All right, it can be done again. Let's put out the word. And so social media was becoming a thing at that point. I started following her and was trying to get ideas from people that were sponsored by different companies or worked for different companies like Petzl. And my aunt happened to live next to a prosthetic doctor. And one day casually mentioned, oh, my niece, who's been so independent and has refused any prosthetic or cosmetic prosthetic, so I can walk around and it looks like I have one hand, but it's just not useful. She knew I never wanted any of that, but she was like, she needs something for ice climbing. And he was like, what's ice climbing? I want to help her. And to be able to have someone with the resources hear about my dream and vision and say, tell me more. I think I want to help problem solve with you. That is the catalyst of my journey as an ice climber, as an adaptive athlete at a level where it's like there's a big adaptation happening for me to access this sport and be successful in this sport.
So you sat down with this. Is he in Washington or where is he at located?
He was based in Washington.
So you could get to him.
He's retired now, and but still will keep in touch. And I've been on some various magazine covers with the prosthetic ice climbing, and so I send those to him and take pictures like what you've done. That's just opened these doors for me. But he sat me down and was like, "What's ice climbing?" And I was like, all right, oh, we're starting at step 0. We got this. And so I showed him some videos of Will Gadd, who is a climber and Canadian climber with a lot of different sponsors and so talented, so many decades of climbing. And he makes amazing videos online that are, you watch him climb, then he also teaches the techniques. And I showed him some Will Gadd climbing videos, and I was like, this is ice climbing. This guy's really good at it. Do you think this is possible? And his first reaction was, well, my number one goal is to make it as safe as possible for you with this tool to stay on you. But he started to learn the aspects of climbing where it's like, I'm not pulling up on the tools. They're really just there to keep me balanced and attached to the wall, but really it's all in your feet. And so he's like, oh, you're moving up with your feet, and then your tools are just keeping you connected. And realizing, he's like, I think we can do this. And got into that process of castings and moldings and sending all my measurements out for a liner and then this carbon fiber prosthetic, and working with Petzl to be able to, I don't know how many ice tools that we need to buy and potentially destroy because we're cutting them, and was able to get it done in 2 rounds, a prototype and the final piece that I still use nearly 8 years later. So it was incredible it's a one of one, very specific to my stump and my arm, and it just still amazes me how successful the prosthetic has been to allow me to ice climb and lead on ice. I can use gear and clean gear and swing leads, and my progression of becoming proficient will look different, and my risk tolerance looks different. I'm not afraid to be like, hey, can you lead that? Actually, I feel better on top rope, or I feel better as a follower, or if it's a new route and we're just lapping it, I'll be like, I don't want to flash it. I wanted top rope it first, and this feels good for the prosthetic. Now I want to do it myself. So it was a different, not a cookie cutter ice climber journey, but the fact that it exists and it didn't at one point is pretty special.
Now, are you selling this, or is this just for you, or
the prosthetic just for me? And insurance sometimes understandably and sometimes doesn't quite look fondly on supporting prosthetics for these types of sports, these high risk sports. And so the doctor is very kind to do this of their own generosity. So it's one of one, and it's around $6,500. That was back in 8 years ago economy. And I don't know what the day right now is for prosthetic building, but it's an expensive thing, and it always makes me nervous when I travel. I do a lot of traveling for ice now, and it's in the bag, and I make sure there's an air tag in my bag, and trying to be like, if this is gone and if I lose it or if it breaks, it's a long, expensive process to recreate. So it's definitely, if there was a house fire, I would be grabbing that and leaving.
See you later, everyone else. I got
Yeah,
this. That's all
I
I
got my
need.
ice tool.
And what does it mean to be a pro alpinist? What are you doing out there in the mountains? That you're competing with people, or are you in the Olympics? What's the goal here, or what are you doing?
Being a professional has a lot of different avenues, and in my world, it's getting the support from outdoor companies, specifically in the gear that they give me, being on teams. And I was with the athlete development program for 2, 3-ish years, working with North Face, where they had this program to pull in a new group of diverse climbers and trail runners, skiers, snowboarders, and I just kind of got to see the world of professional alpinism. When this is your job, when you're paid to do this, to travel, when you get to create a pitch of like, this is my dream climb. I want to go here. I want to open a new route. I want to have a first ascent, or in my world, it's a first disabled ascent. That's also a reality for disabled athletes. And getting to have support that makes it a reality. And as a teacher, you're not getting paid a super amount of money as a professional educator. So to have the support from a company like North Face, or I've been able to be signed with Mountain Hardware in the next 2 years, going full time on their athlete roster is such an incredible honor. And the goals in the mountains across the world that I have my eyes on and I've been training for, to get to proudly wear their gear and get to proudly go accomplish goals and be supported by them is incredibly humbling and exciting, because I go back to thinking of the article where Jim Abbott was like, oh man, talking about my hand again, but maybe it's going to affect a kid. And if that can be my story, back at that age, podcasts weren't a thing. Social
Right.
media wasn't a thing. It was clippings, article clippings. And my mom's like, I had every single one. And
Yeah.
to think maybe I can be like, hey, if I get to share just my story again, maybe there's going to be a little boy or a little girl that their parents hear about it and their parents bookmark that podcast, or their parents follow my journey on Instagram and they're like, this is the hope I have for my kid. Or a person themselves sees themselves in me and go, it can be done. There's a way. I'm not
Yeah.
going to give up. And I really gleaned to this banner over my life. Like, Will did. I can't ice climb. I don't have the body for it. I will ice climb, because I saw that picture of Maureen too. I did ice climb. Can't, will, did. And I feel like that is a story that's a provoking, inspirational belief in yourself that transcends my disability, my story, that anything that you're coming across and you feel adversity or a challenge, I can't, will, did. I can't do it. I will do it. And there'll be a time where I can say, I did do it. And sometimes I'm learning that's not linear. Sometimes it's cyclical and you get injured, or you come up with, oh, that didn't work out. And now I'm back to can't. And then you can start pushing yourself to, no, I will do it. And I'm going to go this route, or my training will look different here. Or some goals I have in the mountains, some first disabled ascents that I'm going after, have been taking a couple of years, and realizing there's a process. And if you can be patient in the process, but also persevere and continue to be moving in grit, you're gonna experience that did. And that is such a exciting place to be. And then challenge of it all. It's okay that things don't come easy for me. It's okay that I failed the first time. That is a mindset that I don't have to choose to get stuck in. And if that can be something that gets me through these things, I think just sharing that is really exciting, to think like maybe someone else in their own story can hear that, can see me, can see my prosthetic and go like, I'm writing my own Will did story.
I love that. And that's why I have this podcast too, is I don't care about the glitzy stuff. I don't care if I have a TV here. I don't care about all that. If this story resonates with someone, that is the mission here. If it helps someone, that's the mission. If this little girl or little boy out there is watching, that's the mission. If a person,
Yeah.
adult, whoever, one person, that's all I hoped for people to hear. Like you watching Jim as a role model, as a superhero. He was your mentor, and now look at you and look at your success. And I have one more question.
Yep.
Did you find love on the mountain?
I brought love to the mountain. I had a short film come out, and a guy slid into my DMs, and he was not from the mountains, which is not what I was used to. And so I brought him to the mountains, and that was the test of how successful he would be in maybe falling in love with me. And our first official, we're driving to Mount Adams, second highest volcano in Washington. I had started teaching him about mountaineering, and I was like, we'll go up the south face of Adams. You don't have to worry about crevasses and a rope team with this guy just yet. We'll stick with ice axe, crampons, sleeping in a tent overnight. Can he handle this? And he knocked it out of the park. And in the last 5 years, we've been married a year and some change. But the last 5 years, he's climbed all the volcanoes and has learned rock climbing. So my husband,
He's your sidekick. He's your ride or die.
my cheerleader, my sidekick, and he sees me travel the world and is just so stoked. And the ways he's so creative and emotionally intelligent, the way he spurs me on and helps me believe in myself. And it's just been so fun to do with a partner that isn't a professional athlete, isn't a mountaineer outside of when we're doing it. It's been really cool. I did not see this coming at all, but it's a sweet story. So it's fun to teach him and his boys. He had 2 teenagers and they got to learn climbing from a female, from a disabled person. And I see the positive effects of how they view someone who looks different and how their language has changed and their empathy, or just treating people, not walking on eggshells or being mean. They're just treating them normal. And I see that in my classroom with kindergarten. Even they get used to the term prosthetic, disabilities, adaptive climbing, where at first they have all kinds of different reactions and they're like, oh, that's so cool. And they hear about it all year. But I try to pull in stories of athletes that look like them maybe. And by the end of the year, I want to be boring to them. I want to be old news. Like, oh, one-handed person, they totally can do whatever they want. They can climb. I've taken away the lack of representation block that makes them assume a deficit mindset. Oh, there's no way because you're a girl, so you wouldn't climb mountains. I've had 5-year-olds tell me that. You don't climb mountains. You're a girl. And here's pictures. I am. And they're like, what? You are a girl? I'm like, yes, I am a girl. The whole different.
And they even have a name for your arm, right? They have a name for your hand.
Oh, they're like Stumpy, or like we talk like no appropriate way.
Your adaptive tool, they have a name for it.
I just call it my prosthetic.
That was a mountain robot. The article I read.
Oh my gosh. Oh, all the time they're like, your robot arm. Can we watch you climb with your robot arm? That they first are like, robot. I get that. Or right now they're really into Roblox and Minecraft, and there's picks, mining picks, and so they're like, oh, you're mining. I use that in Roblox or Minecraft, and that's not the same, but totally, like, I get it. It's sharp and it hits the earth, and so it's really fun to make the connections with them, and then hopefully they go on and as a child or an adult and are around people with limb differences and it doesn't faze them. They're not like, whoa, or they know how to inquire in respectful ways. So it's fun to just not hide anymore. I'm not hiding my hand. I believe that I'm worthy and I don't have to hide anymore. And it's beautiful now to see how that can influence other people, to view people like myself or how to view themselves if they're like me.
Oh, it's a beautiful story. Now, when is your short film going to be out?
The current one, we just wrapped filming a couple of weekends ago. And so now we're in the editing process, and potentially winter 2026, 2027, we'll see it in the short film circuit. And I will let you know when links are available to view it or where you can go to view it in person.
Well, I appreciate that, Kimber. And I thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us, and I'm excited to watch your whole experience the next 2 years. That's exciting. With you said hardware. I'm not familiar with all these.
Mountain hardware.
Yeah. I'm excited to watch you with that journey, and we wish you the best of luck. And I will probably keep on sharing clips if you don't mind of you doing your thing. And I am
thank you so much.
Thank you, Kimber. I'm going to sign off.
Thank you for